We have Brian Metzer on the call now, Pittsburgh Penguins blogger Brian Metzer. Can you hear me, Brian?
I can hear you. Thanks for having me today.
All right, you're welcome. No problem. I mentioned earlier I'm a diehard Flyers fan, but Scotty got you on air, and so we're going to talk some Pittsburgh Penguins. Got a few questions for you if you're ready to roll.
I'm certainly ready for you. Shoot.
All right, first off, going to be asking you about the forwards. We got Ryan Malone, Gary Roberts, George Laraque, Marian Hossa, a bunch of guys all gone. In comes Miroslav Shatan, Ruslan Fedotenko, Matt Cook, Eric Goddard. Is this new group going to be as productive as last year's unit that finished very solid 7th in the league in scoring?
Well, obviously it's going to be tough to replace the productivity they received from Ryan Malone and Marian Hossa, but you have to keep in mind that Malone scored a career-high 27 goals last year that I'm hoping will be able to be matched by one of Satan or Fedotenko playing with Sidney Crosby. And Marian Hossa wasn't part of the roster until February 26th at the trade deadline. So they made it through the bulk of the season without him. And so the main loss there was the Malone productivity. I do feel that Goddard's a little bit of a step back from George Laraque and the heavyweight department, but he will be able to do the job, and they also kept Paul Bissonnette around this year, who's going to be another bruiser for them. Overall, I think that their productivity may suffer a little bit, but you're going to see steps forward from some other players on the roster to offset that, such as you're going to get a full season of productivity from Sidney Crosby as long as he can stay healthy. Evgeny Malkin should do something along the lines of what he did last year. And you also have guys such as Tyler Kennedy ready to take a step forward, who's going to start to contribute a little more than he did last year. So overall, the roster's a little bit along the same lines as it was last season at the start of the year, if not a little bit better. It's obviously not the same team that was in the Stanley Cup final, but for right now, you really just have to make a run at that Atlantic Division crown and Eastern Conference crown before you get to that trade deadline and see what pieces you need to move forward.
Yes, of course. I was going to mention, Tyler Kennedy. I know he's an up-and-coming guy, and I think we're going to see a big step forward from him. He just signed an extension this offseason, didn't he?
Yes, he did, just about a week ago, actually.
Okay, so he's going to be there for a long time, and I think he'll be a key part of the team. Now, second, the burning question, of course, and I'm sure you can figure out by me saying burning question, it's going to be about the defense. Gonchar and Whitney out several months. Who's going to fill the big minutes on special teams and in the key situations like a one-goal game at the end of the game?
Well, I think just first to speak to the special teams aspect of that, it's going to be Christopher Letang who's going to step into the power play on the top unit. What they originally did whenever Gonchar first went out in the preseason is they started to use Evgeny Malkin back on the right point of the power play, which is where Sergei Gonchar typically is. And on the other side is usually where you had Ryan Whitney. That's where Chris Letang is going to spend most of his time. So you're going to have Malkin and Chris Letang back there. And on the second unit, it's going to be Alex Goligoski that's going to step in and hope to pick up some, big power play time for the team, because he did make the final roster that was announced today, which was pretty much a foregone conclusion after the injuries. Now, looking at it on a defensive side of things, I really think that someone like Brooks Orpik is going to have to step up. He obviously played very well down the stretch last year once he was partnered with Sergei Gonchar, and through the playoffs he was sort of a monster for the Pittsburgh Penguins and did everything that they expected out of him. Now, he needs to keep that momentum going now that he signed a bigger contract and he stayed with the team long term, and he's going to have to make up for the loss of his partner on the blue line there. But you also get a guy back like Mark Eaton, who was out for most of last season and the prior season due to injuries that were sort of a freakish variety. And he's back in the lineup now. He's going to look to log some big minutes, and he's a big shot blocker and a pretty good defensive specialist back there for the Penguins. They went from pretty much having one of the best offensive blue lines in the league to maybe a little more defensive-oriented defense, which is strange when you say that in regard to a blue line, because that's what their main job should be. But when you partner those two guys with Hal Gill, Rob Scuderi, you still have Chris Letang. Obviously, it's going to go in and play regular minutes as well. I think that they're obviously not as good as they were with the other two players in there, but they'll be able to get the job done at least in the early going, and if not, look for Ray Shero to make some moves to supplement it.
Yes, I know Ray Shero has done a good job addressing the needs, of course, bringing in Hossa and Gill at the trade deadline last year. And I'm very familiar with Mark Eaton. Used to be in the Philadelphia Flyers organization, and he may be the only NHLer I ever heard of who was was born in the state of Delaware. He's from Wilmington.
Yeah, that's his claim to fame, being a Delaware boy.
Yeah, Delawareans, they put people in the NFL and Major League Baseball. Not so much the National Hockey League, though, so it's certainly it's got some notoriety for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Next question. Can the Penguins afford to re-sign Jordan Staal at the end of this season?
Well, I think that they're really hoping to maybe get something done with him throughout the season. I know they approached him a little bit during the summer and weren't able to really get it done, but it wasn't a huge focal point for them because they had some other priorities, namely Evgeny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury, guys like that. But now Stahl's going to be moving into the last year of his contract with this season, and they do want to lock him up long term. He was somebody that Ray Shero has pretty he holds him in pretty high esteem. He keeps him in the same breath with Malkin, Crosby, Marc-Andre Fleury as being part of this core. So I think that it's definitely going to get done. It's just a matter of what sort of dollars it's going to be based on his productivity this year. I sort of wish they would have gotten something done prior to this season because obviously his offensive productivity was down last year, and they may have been able to get him for a little bit more of an affordable rate. But moving forward, if he scores 30, 35 goals playing with Evgeny Malkin this year, they're going to have their hands full trying to get him signed. Might be something in the $4.5 million range.
Yes, I know it's going to be a concern, and you hope it's not a distraction, of course. Ongoing contract negotiations during the season can be a distraction. Do you think this could be?
I don't think so as much with him. I think that if things were a little more heated between the two sides, it might be a distraction. But right now, Jordan Staal feels that he's, just in talking with him through training camp, he's a player that, he's under contract for this year. He's not worried about it, and he knows something will get done one way or another. And the way the system is set up, the Penguins will still control his rights through arbitration and things like that into the future for a little while. So for right now, I don't think it's much of a distraction, and I think it's something that they're going to be able to get it taken care of.
Okay. Well, yeah, that sounds good. I think they're going to. I agree with you. I think they're going to get something done, and Staal is going to be a Penguin for a long time. Now, I'll ask you something that a trade that our own Dennis Lemieux proposed. He said as a solution for Pittsburgh's current problems. Unfortunately, it would involve getting rid of Jordan Staal, so you might say they wouldn't do it immediately. He says they should consider trading Staal to the Toronto Maple Leafs. In return, get either Tomas Kaberle or Pavel Kabina and a 2010 first-round draft pick. What do you think of that?
I personally wouldn't make the deal at this point, with both of those guys sort of being in the later stages of their careers at this point. They still have years left, but Staal has so much upside remaining. There's no guarantee to tell you which or whereabouts that first rounder is going to be. Granted, it might be in the top end of the draft based on how things are going in Toronto. I just still don't think that would bring you good value for Staal at this point based on what he potentially could do. And his name has surfaced numerous times in trade discussions, and I don't think it's one that Ray Shero takes very seriously, and I wouldn't expect to see a deal go down with Staal going to Toronto at any point just based on what they have to offer right now. And with both of those players having no movement clauses as well, they might waive it to come to a team like Pittsburgh, but at the same time, there were some pretty decent offers on the table for him last year, and they kept turning it down because they said that they were comfortable playing in Toronto, and that's where they wanted to be.